next work session is the Community Services Board Annual Update. Mr. Pappas.
Mr. Pappas, good to see you. Good afternoon.
Mr. Holland? Welcome. Thank you. So, in the spirit of volunteerism, I'm here as a member of the Chesterfield Community Services Board. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Dr. Casey, thank you for the opportunity to present an annual update on the activities of the Chesterfield Community Services Board. I'm Nick Pappas, the chair of the CSB, and it's a privilege to be with you here today and to bring you greetings on behalf of our board. At this time, I'd like to introduce the members of the CSB who are here and ask that they stand and be recognized when I call their names. Mr. Mike Giancaspro, Ms. Davida Murphy-Hassan, and Mr. Gibb Sloan. And we'll have others joining us later on today for dinner.
Welcome, everyone.
We continue to be an active and dedicated board. We have several board members who have served 9 years, that's 3 terms, and when eligible, returned. We have board members who serve on multiple committees, chairing committees, meeting regularly, working with staff, and actively participating. We are dedicated because we know the value of the work that this agency does in serving our community. We appreciate that we get to work with staff and senior management and an executive director in Kelly Freed that values our input. And that this organization has the support of you, all of you, the Board of Supervisors, Dr. Casey, Dr. Worsley, and County Administration. As you know, we serve among the most vulnerable members of this community during challenging times. That community includes all of us. In one way or another, we are all affected. If not you personally, then someone you know. Family, friend, neighbor, and increasingly, children. In a community, we are all touched in some way. I myself at one time received services for anxiety and depression. That is not easy to disclose in this setting, but it feels important to share. The fact that I am standing here before you in this role as the chair of the CSB, giving back, is testimony to the effectiveness of these services. And I am just one of many who have gotten back their lives because of the services that we provide in Chesterfield. So thank you for your leadership and your continued support of allowing us to serve. We are grateful for the opportunity to make a difference. And now I'd like to introduce our Executive Director, Ms. Kelly Freed. Kelly?
Afternoon.
Afternoon. Thanks so much, Nick. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Dr. Casey. It is our mission to always provide quality services that lead to better health and recovery, and staff continue to fulfill this mission as we continue to see the effects that COVID has played on our community, especially with children that we will talk about, or I will talk about a little bit later in our presentation. Just over the past year in FY22, we served about a little over 6,500 residents, evenly split pretty much for the first time between mental health and those with intellectual disabilities, and then about another 600 in our substance use services. In addition to that, our prevention services served another 5,500 individuals, which was really a huge increase from last year. I think we were up from like 685 because we really weren't able at that time to be out in the community. But this past year, all of our services resumed out in the community doing classes, parenting classes, and most importantly, having our staff back doing home visits with families that need us the most. In addition, through social media campaigns and other videos, billboards, and so forth, we had a reach of over 1.4 million viewers. And then, of course, our Facebook page had over 80,000 impressions. Our budget is right around $50 million. Of course, the majority of the revenue is from Medicaid, Medicare, and insurances. We always like to point out that less than 10% of our budget goes to administrative services. And all of our additional funding requests from FY23 were funded by outside revenue. There was no direct cost from the general fund. Our services are heavily regulated by the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services, and our expectations are outlined in a performance contract, and I know on the consent agenda tonight, we will be asking your approval of our performance contract with the department. Just to highlight a few of our key accomplishments over the past year, we were very fortunate to be coming out of the pandemic when it was time for our 50th anniversary celebration. So I know many of you were able to attend that, and it was just an excellent event. Also, within the past year, we had our accreditation or our reaccreditation from the Commission on Accreditation of Rehabilitative Facilities. It was our 9th survey, but what's really important is it extended our 24-year history of full accreditation of all of our programs and services. And then, of course, last month you recognized our NACO and VACO award winners throughout the county, and we were fortunate to have 2 NACO awards, one for mental health as a puzzle, but we have the missing piece, and of course that was in collaboration with Citizen Information and Resources, the Youth Citizens Board, and also Communications and Media. That initiative actually was the one that received both a NACO and a VACO award. And then, of course, our other NACO award was Resilient Chesterfield, and that was in partnership with the Chesterfield Suicide Awareness and Prevention Coalition. Our workforce, that is huge. We've heard it throughout other presentations and the challenges that we're seeing in every, realm. But I just want to say a huge thank you to you and county administration for the pay study that was completed over the past year. Phase 1 implementation had a profound effect on our department. We are seeing just within the first few months after that, our turnover rates are less than 5%, and we were running turnover rates of 24.5% over the last year. In addition to that, we have been extremely successful in trying to hire our residential positions, and so we stopped our continuous ads, which have been running for years in this program. And so it's just been tremendous to see the impacts that this has had on our department. There's a number of initiatives that are going on in our department, but I'm just going to mention a few that are things that we're really focusing on right now. When we talk about Marcus Alert, this is really just one piece of the overall crisis transformation that is occurring across the state in all community services boards. Really, the impetus for this is trying to deal with the hospital bed crisis that we have been hearing about for years. And so there's initiatives on the front end to try to impact individuals ending up in emergency rooms, and then I'll talk a little bit later about the back end of how do we get people out of hospitals. And so there is an infrastructure that needs to be in place in order to make something like Marcus Alert effective. There's the 988 hotline, national hotline number that went live in July that is still being rolled out and interfaced with 911 systems. There's regional call centers that are supposed to come into play to assist with calls, and then, of course, the mobile crisis response. Once those pieces are in place, then it makes it easier to implement the level 1 through level 4 responses with the Marcus Alert, which, for the public, the biggest thing that Marcus Alert is providing a behavioral health response to a behavioral health situation. Here in Chesterfield, we are slated to implement all of the protocols by July of 2023, so it gives us, 8 months or so to determine what we need to be doing here in Chesterfield. Although there is a template about how all of the all localities are supposed to become in compliance, it really is up to the localities to determine how we implement the protocols. And so we have a county task force that's already been operating and looking into the standards. It involves police, it involves fire, county administration, county attorneys. Everybody's at the table trying to make sure that what we implement in Chesterfield is the best for Chesterfield. There is $600,000 that will be coming eventually from the Department of Behavioral Health towards this effort. We have not received those monies yet. They would come before the board when we do receive those. But that's ongoing funding that all localities will receive. Oh, I do want to point out before I move on, we have a strong system already to prepare us for this. Our relationship, mental health relationship with fire, police, sheriff, everybody is just so integrated. I'll talk a little bit later of how we're embedded in some of those services. And then also a real strength to this is all of our public safety officers go through the CIT training. And just this past year, we conducted another 5 trainings with public safety officers training, almost another 100 public safety responders in CIT. So we're doing some great things. Permanent supportive housing, we know housing for individuals with serious mental illness and those with substance use disorders is extremely important. Number one, to sustain their recovery, but also to prevent homelessness. And we appreciate your support of the project, other county projects such as the Horner property, the Colebrook property. Those partnerships that we are, partnering with the Better Housing Coalition will enable us to have approximately 25 apartments to place the individuals that receive our services. In FY22, in addition to that, we applied and received just right around $700,000 in permanent supportive housing funds through the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services, which will allow us to place 30 individuals into stable housing. This type of funding is really important because it not only pays for rent, it also pays for the wraparound services that individuals receive, and also any emergency funding that may need to be needed. This model of funding is key to meeting our future housing needs for this population and is more sustainable than what our traditional methods have been, which is providing housing subsidies to these individuals. I guess I would pretty much describe the permanent supportive housing model as being very similar to the other model that we have for for those with intellectual disabilities, which is the waiver model. They're not exactly the same, but I think what I really want to point out is that historically, there has never been any funding that has gone towards mental health housing. And so this permanent supported housing funding is really the first effort to do that. I just want to point out the picture. We recently were able to find housing for this mother and son, and this is the first time that her son has ever had a bedroom to his own. And so this is some of the success stories that can come from finding these housing placements. We're very concerned about children's mental health. Indicators of student mental health distress are at an all-time high. This is a national graph here, but it very much mirrors what we're seeing here in Chesterfield. We've seen about a 25% increase in youth who are experiencing depressive and anxiety symptoms. Nationally, there was a 120% increase in hospitalizations due to eating disorders. And then also nationally, there were over 2,400 child suicides in 2020. Children were the only age group that increased nationally in the number of suicides between 2019 and 2020. In 2021, nationally, emergency department visits for suspected suicide attempts in the United States increased 51% in adolescent girls. In Chesterfield, we also saw an increase in suicide attempts, starting at 9 in 2019. We increased to 13 in 2020, went up to 14 in 2021, but fortunately decreased to 5 in 2022. And of course, these were individuals that were linked to our services. This is Suicide Awareness Month, and our prevention team has been out in our schools, even before school started, working with teachers, also doing the signs of suicide training with our students in the schools. There's bookmarks, there's all kinds of social media efforts, just really trying to educate, make individuals aware of the signs, and then also to help individuals, recognize how and where they're able to seek help. But the reality is there. We're seeing, during the pandemic, we saw here in Chesterfield an increase in both physical abuse and sexual abuse in children between 2019 and 2020. Assessing treatment options for youth, especially those with complex and severe symptoms, is increasingly difficult. This includes hospitalizations. We only have one children's hospital throughout the whole state, and that was operating at less than 50% capacity for almost throughout the pandemic. Crisis stabilization options, as well as residential treatment. It is very difficult to find those services, and very often children in Chesterfield have to go outside of Virginia, much less outside of Chesterfield. They have to go outside of Virginia to find some of these treatment options. And so there's a number of us who work collaboratively all the time, as well as the family assistance placement team within the county, just looking at options and trying to determine what we can do here in Chesterfield to make these services more accessible. Our partnerships are critical to serving residents, and mental health services are really embedded in all of our county departments. Lauren Hirschler, who is our substance use outreach coordinator, continues to do excellent work out in our high-risk communities. She, during the past year, distributed over almost 1,800 boxes of Narcan out in the community, and we know for a fact that over 282 residents in Chesterfield were revived from the doses that she distributed out. She has developed a really tight connection with the community of trust, and so they will reach back out to her and they will divulge when these things occur. Individuals don't always seek help from, fire, EMS, or whatever when they do an overdose, but then they reach back out and get in touch with her about either needing additional Narcan, which this isn't about just distributing Narcan. She's out there also providing information on programs and services and trying to steer individuals towards treatment. She also distributed over 2,000 fentanyl strips, testing strips as a harm reduction strategy, and I think, and this is to help the public better understand what is in their supply. One of the positives from this whole thing is that as she's out there, one thing she has noted is we are not seeing an increase in additional individuals using substances. What we're seeing the increase in is overdoses of people that currently use, and that's because the supplies are so tainted right now that it's very difficult to know what's in it. People are using it, and then they're ending up overdosing, and so that's the purpose for providing the fentanyl testing strips to try to, avert an overdose occurring. Also, we have a mobile integrated healthcare team in partnership with Fire and EMS, Lieutenant Bigelow, as well as our peer provider, Lane Weatherholt, are doing tremendous work in the community. They actually follow up after an overdose, especially if Fire and EMS has gone out to a call, if somebody's hospitalized, or just knowing that this has occurred, then it's a peer effort to go out, talk with the individuals, and try to get them into treatment. Last year, there were 186 calls or referrals that they responded to. Already since January, there have been 151, but our peer provider, I know, has been doing outreach to at least 92 since March, which was when he was hired, and he has a very high rate, about 73% effectiveness of the individuals he's able to reach to get them into intensive recovery programs. So being out in the community, boots on the ground, working with individuals is really working, and we're seeing the results of that. We also have the work of our county substance use steering committee under the leadership of Melanie Meadows, and we're continuing to develop plans for the monies that the county will be receiving as a result of the opioid abatement settlement. And of course, you being on that board is very helpful to us as well, Mr. Holland. We also receive funding from the Department of Behavioral Health to support our substance use programs, and tonight there is also a consent agenda item for approval for us to be able to receive an additional $395,000 in state opioid response funding from the Department of Behavioral Health. This will be used to administer our medication-assisted treatment recovery program. We'll also be able to assist residents with the cost of detox, transportation, and also some short-term housing assistance. We continue to partner with Sheriff Leonard and his staff by providing mental health services in the jails. I know that he is currently seeking accreditation with the jails, and a big component of that are the behavioral health services. And so we're very much having conversations with him and trying to make sure that we're getting a system in place to really help in that area. And then, of course, just a couple of other things. We're part of the county's team under the leadership of Commonwealth Attorney Stacey Davenport, as well as Melanie Meadows again, to implement a veterans treatment docket. Veterans treatment docket. And then, of course, we're in the heart of implementing the Chesterfield Recovery Academy in partnership with the school system, which is the first recovery academy in Virginia. I'm happy to report that we have 10 students who are already part of that program. 9 are from Chesterfield, 1 is from Henrico, and we are getting our mental health services up and running in the program as well. So a lot of good work being done there. Our feature highlight, we always like to talk about a success story, and this year we really would like to celebrate Larry, we call him Randy Ward, who is retiring after 46 years as a vocational worker with Chesterfield Employment Services. Randy started out in the Sheltered Workshop Program back in 1976. He worked in this setting, performing production work for 9 years before joining a group cleaning the Wagner Building in the evenings. Randy worked on the Wagner crew for its entire 17-year run. When this site ended, he transitioned to Ingram Books Distribution Warehouse in Dinwiddie for a couple of years. When Chesterfield Employment Services initiated a contract with UPS Freight in 2003, he joined that group again with his considerable cleaning skills, and he worked with UPS Freight on both the evening crew, the midday crew, from 2003 until 2019 when that arrangement ended. The last 2 years of his working career, Randy worked with one other placement. This was an individual placement cleaning the Reach administration buildings down in Festival Park. Randy will be enjoying retirement with his mother, Jean, in their home in southeastern Chesterfield County. We are so proud of Randy for showing others the contributions that people with disabilities can make in their communities. He was one of our pioneers, and we cannot thank him and his mother, Jean, enough for sharing the past 46 years with us at Chesterfield Employment Services. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you Randy Ward and express our sincere appreciation for his 46 years of dedicated service to Chesterfield County Employment Services and to our Mental Health Support Services Department. Randy?
Mr. Chair, I think if he went a couple more years, he'd qualify for 2 bricks.
I didn't hear that double up concept until now.
This
Hello.
is his mother, Jean.
Yeah,
so-
I'm his mother, Gwyneth Jean. Randy started to work at 18. He was 18. Loved it. He's had a wonderful job, safe jobs. I didn't have to worry about him getting hurt or not getting along with anyone. He turned 60 December the 22nd of last year. So he told me it still wasn't time for him to retire. All the van drivers were wonderful. The work coach, you couldn't, Randy, all of his doctors cannot believe that Randy's in this good a shape at 60 years old. Most kids like Randy go away in their early 40s. They cannot believe, but it's the program that y'all have that get him motivated to want to work and spend his money for what he wants to spend it on. And in the end of June, he had a light stroke. And that kind of affected his right leg. So when that happened, I went ahead and let him retire. And he has a therapist that comes by 3 days a week to work out with him, and he's doing better. And I've got to tell you this, the other day the van driver stopped by just to say hi to Randy. But when the van pulled up in the driveway, Randy said, no. He thought he had to go to work. But thank you so much. I mean, that's why my husband was in the military, retired from Philip Morris. That's why we're in Chester, is what they have done for Randy. That's it. You don't
Thank you.
find this in a lot of states. And I mean, when they come and pick you up right at the door, make sure that when you get off of that van, you're in that house safe. They do not pull out of the driveway until he's inside. I cannot thank you enough.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank
so much.
you. And another round of applause for Larry, Randy Ward, please. That was wonderful. Thank you.
As I close, I would just like to recognize the members of the senior management team. I'm the one up here doing the presentation, but they are the backbone of our organization, and clearly many or most of these initiatives, they are all really deep in leading these efforts. So at this time, I would like to ask them to stand. Danielle Sayre, Yark Mukowski, Doug Bilski, Mandy Pilk, David Meadows, Dr. Angela Catalico, and then, of course, she's not here, but our administrative assistant, Brooke Cook. So, thank you so much. So at this time, I'll entertain any questions.
Questions or comments from board members?
Thank you. Great.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. It's been a great report, and congratulations, Randy. And thank you all for that work you do on behalf of citizens every single day. It is so, so appreciated, and we can't thank you enough.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.